Hi, my name is Jenna Zimmerman, and I'm going to be doing a third grade math lesson plan, and my standard is understand a fraction as a number on a number line and represent fractions on a number line. And then the other one is represent a fraction 1 over b on a number line diagram by defining the interval from 0 to 1 as the whole and partitioning it into b equal parts. So I know we were supposed to record this on CoReactor Zoom, but I don't know why I couldn't get it to work. So I'm just gonna do this, and hopefully that works for you. Yeah. So since I don't have a class, I will. It's gonna be a little weird recording this. I will be doing like teacher timeouts and just kind of explaining things, but I'll try to teach as much as possible. And hopefully you can see my little whiteboard set up back here, but that's the best I could do. So that is what we're working with for today. So I will go ahead and get started then. So, hi third grade. So today we are going to be continuing talking about fractions, and so we're going to start off with just a little visual. So here is a piece of paper. Okay, so if we were talking about fractions, this would be a one whole. So it's a whole piece of paper, and this would represent one thing. But what would happen if we cut the paper in half? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now we have two. So thinking back to what we've been talking about with fractions, what would these two papers represent? Okay, so it would represent 1/2. So each half, you have each half, and when you put them together, it makes a whole. Okay, good job. So if we take this a step further, what happens if we cut the halves in half? So we're gonna try that and see what happens. Okay, so now we have 4 equal parts. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so think about that. So we started off with one whole, okay, and we cut the whole into halves, okay, then we cut the halves in half. So now we have 4. So think back to our talk. What would this represent? Good job. It would be 1/4, okay? So if you put all the fourths together, you would have one whole piece of paper. Good job, guys. So now we're going to move on to our lesson today. And so we've learned that you can divide a whole into parts, and those parts are called fractions. And when you put the fractions together, they can make your whole, all right? And so, but what happens if we have to divide something that isn't something we can touch? So with this piece of paper, like, I could cut it in half, and I have the 2 halves. I could cut the halves in halves, and then I'd have fourths. So I can physically touch these, and I can see that, oh, okay, like these two are half of a paper. And then if I have a 4, like these 4s make a whole paper. But like, what if I can't touch it? So what if we have the example of time? So think of a clock. How would you represent 1 hour on like a piece of paper? So if you had to write it out, how could you represent 1 hour in the terms of fractions? Okay, so go ahead and get your whiteboard out and marker and just brainstorm a little bit about how you think you could represent a hour as like fractions on a piece of paper. Okay, so teacher timeout. This is when I would give the students just a little bit of time to brainstorm, maybe have them, pair up with their table partner and just kind of brainstorm what they think. If they're really, really struggling, the idea of this is try to get them into the direction of thinking of a number line. And so I would go around and make a few suggestions to students and just kind of get them on that track. So yeah, and then I would bring all the kids back together, and I would do something like this. So then I'd be like, okay guys, I noticed you have some great ideas. One of the ideas I noticed was a number line. So this is a great idea, and this is what we're going to kind of be talking about today. So think, if we're representing 1 hour, so if I want to represent an hour as a number line, okay, I would draw a line and I'd have 2 notches, okay? So think, what would these 2 notches represent if we have 1 hour? So we need a number that represents it right here, and a number that represents something right there. So what do you think our 2 numbers would be? Okay, so if you thought a 0 for right here and a 1 for right here, you are correct, okay? So this would represent no time has passed, okay? So that would be 0 time. And if we look at this one, that would be 1 hour. Okay, so good job. So now, what happens if we want to divide our hour in half? So let me give you a scenario. So let's say that for half an hour, or for the first part of an hour, Timmy wants to play baseball. But for the second half of the hour, he wants to play kickball. Okay? So where do you think we would have to put a notch or a line to indicate that? Okay? Good job. So we would have to put it right in the middle. So, okay, so right here he'd be playing baseball, and right here he'd be playing kickball. Okay? So what should we label our little notch? What do you think? All right, so it's halfway in between our hours. This is 1 whole hour, and this is 0 hours. So what could we label that with? What do you think? What fraction? Okay, so 1/2. Good job. All right, so for the first half of the hour, so from this tick mark to this tick mark, the first half, he was playing baseball. But for the second half, this half and this, from the 1/2 mark to 1 hour, he was playing kickball. Okay, so you can see that we have 2 equal parts, and when we put the half and the half together, we get 1 whole. Okay, good job. So let's take this one step further. So what happens if halfway through his baseball, he gets thirsty and he has to take a drink? Okay, so where would we put the tick mark? All right, halfway through his baseball, he needs to get a drink of water. Okay, good job. We would put the tick mark right here in between. All right, so as you can see, that's halfway through the baseball, so that's where your tick mark goes. But let's think for a second. Now we have to label it. So what do you think we could label it as? All right, so we're halfway through the half. So do you think that our number should be less than a half or more than a half? Less than a half. Good job. So that would be, so half of a half is 1/4. Good job. So we learned that with in our previous lesson, didn't we? And we kind of showed that with our papers earlier. That when you take 1/2 and cut it in half, you get a 1/4. So good job, guys. We are going to do one more example. All right. So this time we're going to be talking about distance. So let's say Sally wants to run a kilometer, right? She wants to run 1 kilometer. So on your whiteboards, using the same type of method, draw what you think, how you would draw out what you think it would look like if she ran 1 kilometer, okay? Using our number line. Okay, teacher time out, give the students some time just to talk and collaborate a little bit and see what they come up with. Okay, and then I bring them all back together. All right, class, let's bring our attention back up here. What did you guys come up with? Okay, so then I would have the students share, obviously, what they come up with, and hopefully they come up with something like this. So we have our number line, okay, and we would want to label our 0 and our 1. So this would represent Sally in 1 kilometer, okay? Good job, guys. So here is my question for you. If Sally ran 2/3 of the way, then where should we put our tick mark? So she was running, and 2/3 of the way, she had to stop and take a break. So where do you think our tick mark would go? Within here, okay? So think about 2/3, okay? Particularly the thirds. So if we're thinking about that, then that means we divide our whole into 3 parts, because we always look at the bottom number to see like how many parts it's being divided up into, okay? So think about that. Write that on your whiteboard. All right, So we're looking at this whole, and we know we have to divide it into 3 equal parts, all right? So if I want 3 equal parts, I'm going to put a tick mark about there and a tick mark about there, okay? So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3 equal parts, all right? Good job, guys. Okay, so but now we have to label our tick marks. So what do you think we would label our first tick mark as? Okay, 1/3. Good job. Okay, because this is 1 part of the whole third. Okay, so you have 1/3. So this would be 2/3. Good job. 2/3, and then we have our whole. Okay, so this is 1 part of the whole. So it's 1/3. 2 parts of the whole. So it's 2/3. And then this is 3 parts of the whole. So it's 1 whole. Okay, good job. All right, so we said that she stopped 2/3 of the way through. So what mark would she have stopped at? 2/3. Good job. So this is where Sally stopped. Okay. All right. Good job, guys. Another teacher timeout. So this is where I would do a little guided practice, and it would go over our 15 or like our 15-20 minute time limit that we have here. But I think it's something that kind of just extends the lesson. So if I were to have more time, this is definitely something I would do. Also, something that I forgot to mention at the beginning is I would give students manipulatives to help them kind of work through these problems. So there's those pattern blocks. They're like wooden shapes that have like the hexagon, and then it has like different shapes that you can like make a whole hexagon. I have a link in my lesson plan about how you manipulatives online that you can use to kind of supplement that if you're doing this online. But yeah, so this guided practice is something I would do to extend the lesson. Obviously, if I didn't have that time in an actual classroom, I would just do stuff like this and just kind of keep going over more problems and more scenarios and stories just to help them kind of really visualize the number line and see how they can use different numbers and divide the number line into different parts. I will show you so this is a little worksheet. Sorry, I could not get it to print out. I don't know if that's going to focus. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, but it's a fraction bar worksheet, and as you can see, they would cut out all the little bars, and then they would label them. So this would be 1 whole, and this one would be a half, and this one would be thirds. So they would label each one like a half and a half, and 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So I think this would be something they can go back to for future problems and stuff. They need to visualize and see and touch it. They will always have these with them to use. I think also if you sent them home, since we all are on doing like hybrid learning and stuff like that, this is a good manipulative for them to have at home. So when they're doing their homework at home, they can still have a manipulative to use for their homework. So that's kind of why I added that in there. And so yeah, so that would take the time to do that if I had the time. And then for now, I'm going to go to our kind of wrap-up assessment closing activity that I would do. So I would hand out sticky notes to kids, and I would draw a big number line on our board. Okay, label 0 and 1. And kids would, and then, so this is what I would do. All right, class, so for our final little activity, I'm going to give each of you a sticky note, and I would pass them out. And on this sticky note, I want you to write a fraction, okay? So think back to what we've been talking about and write a fraction on your sticky note. And what you're going to do is when I call your group, you're going to come up and you're going to put the sticky note where you think it goes between 1 and 0, okay? So, for example, if you have 1/2, you're going to put your sticky note right here because that's where the 1/2 would go, okay? So, go ahead and write a fraction on your sticky note, okay? And I would give students time to write on there, and I would have them all come up and then put their sticky note where they think it goes on the line. So if they wrote 2/3, you know, it would be down here is where they would put their sticky note. If they did 1/4, then obviously it would be right here, and then we would just have all the kids come up and do that. And so this is an assessment for me just to kind of see where the kids are at and if they kind of understand the basic placement of where fractions go. Obviously, this is kind of like another intro lesson into number lines, so it's just something we're going to have to work on. And so based on where they put their fractions and stuff like that, I would do a discussion about what students thought about it. So if, somebody wrote 1/3 and they had it over here instead of close to 0, we would just talk about that. Be like, okay guys, so what do you think is wrong with this? Like, why do you think 1/3 goes over here and not over here? And just kind of trying to get kids to see numbers and be able to picture them in their head, and on like what side of the number line it goes to. So that's kind of my assessment and my wrap-up activity. It also kind of gets kids out of their desks. So that is my lesson. It was kind of all over the place just because I couldn't get the recording and stuff to work, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and I think that's all I got. Thanks.